Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Natalia Moczulska and this is the news. A year has passed since the beginning of the unjustified, unprovoked, barbaric Russian invasion of Ukraine. Our neighbors defended their independence, but part of their territory came under Russian occupation. The aggressors' troops ravaged much of Ukraine, causing the deaths of thousands and the flight of millions. The invasion caused the largest refugee crisis in Europe since World War II. Last year, on the night of February 23rd to 24th, President Vladimir Putin delivered a propaganda address to citizens in which he explained his decision to launch an invasion. In the morning, Ukrainians heard the first explosions, and at around 8 a.m. Polish time, land formations of the Russian army crossed into Ukraine. I turn now to you, Ukrainian soldier, rescuer of Ukrainians, helper of the nation. I thank everyone who has endured this cruel year. And at this point, I want to say to all of you who are fighting for Ukraine and living with it in your heart, I am proud of you. We are all proud of you. Let this pride of ours go through the streets, trenches, cities, through hearts and through countries. Let it speak everywhere. Ukraine is alive. Russian troops numbered 100,000 when the invasion began. The coordinated attack came from four main directions: from southern Belarus to the Kiev region, from the northeast into Kharkiv region, from the Russian separatist-controlled part of Donbass toward Dnipro and Zaporizhia, and from the south toward Odessa. The Russians were most concerned with capturing the capital and thus paralyzing the Ukrainian power apparatus. To this end, in addition to a ground offensive, they attempted to launch a landing from more than 20 helicopters at the Hostomel airfield near Kiev. The commanders have not shown off their finesse at either the strategic, operational, or tactical level. The troops are badly commanded. The commanders are not leaders. The subdivisions of Wagner and Kadyrov, which were supposed to make a breakthrough on operational activities, also failed. Already in April, the Ukrainians demonstrated their ability to counteroffensive by recapturing part of the Kharkiv region. The full counteroffensive began in September. At that time, the authorities in Kiev recaptured the Kharkiv region and by November 11th, pushed the Russians beyond the Dnieper and entered Kherson. Since December, the situation on the front has not changed significantly. The Ukrainians have been training for years. Whether at Western military universities or under the tutelage of Western instructors, they gradually took over Western-made equipment, perfected their own, applied the fighting methods, tactics, and operational art of the NATO army, and this had the effect that they were able to put up effective resistance to the Russians on that very 24th of February last year. The UN reports that since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, more than 7,000 civilians have been killed and more than 11,500 wounded. The Russians have repeatedly violated human rights and violated the laws of war. Places particularly marked by Russian atrocities are Bucha, Izium, Irpin, and Borodyanka. Ukrainian services are still working to determine the exact scale of Russian barbarism. Trenches stretching for tens of kilometers, positions of military dugouts, assaults on a regular basis with Ura screaming Russians. This is the reality not only of 1945, but also of 2022. Welcome, dear people, to the 21st century. In the last days of September last year, the occupation authorities held illegal referendums on the annexation of the Donetsk, Lugansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions to Russia. Under the rigged plebiscites, Russia took away more than 15% of Ukraine's territory. The annexed Zaporizhia is home to a nuclear power plant that has been repeatedly shelled by the Russians. Its damage may have led to nuclear contamination. This does not change the fact that the Russians have not yet shown the full potential of their capabilities. Russia is a very powerful country. The nation is a nation largely stupefied by propaganda, unfortunately. Unless there is some kind of palace coup and someone brings it about, not Putin of course, but that whole Putin clique loses power, I would rather expect that these scenarios which are related to the escalation of the war will be very seriously considered, perhaps even implemented. The world is talking about a year of heroic resistance by Ukrainians, but they themselves insist that their war began on February 20th in 2014 with the annexation of Crimea. In turn, a month and a half later, Moscow-backed pro-Russian separatists launched the war in Donbass. Historians have no doubt the full-scale invasion of Ukraine is a continuation of Moscow's imperial policies, which the heirs of the Soviet Union have never renounced. Poland was the first to rush to the aid of the struggling Ukraine. Within a year, we donated more than $2 billion worth of armaments to Ukraine. Only the United States and the United Kingdom, as well as Germany, spent more. The Polish government is constantly on the diplomatic offensive, during which it lobbies at home and abroad to help the embattled Ukraine and weaken the Kremlin's war machine with sanctions. At today's National Security Council, President Andrzej Duda unveiled the results of his latest diplomatic offensive. I think all participants are satisfied. Anyway, you could hear it from the participants, especially those who represented the opposition, which I personally welcome. We have led to the fact that the Tanks Battalion was created for Ukraine, so now they have 31 tanks. Even Spain has joined this coalition of countries owning Leopard 2A4 tanks. And so, as the president said, today the Polish Leopards have already arrived in Ukraine. Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki visited Kiev today, where he laid flowers at the memorial wall of those who died for Ukraine. He also visited a local hospital where aid is being provided to wounded soldiers. The head of the Polish government handed Volodymyr Zelensky the symbolic keys to the first 4 Leopard tanks that arrived from Poland to Ukraine. We have received the first tanks. They will support our defense. Thank you, Mateusz, for initiating the formation of this coalition. It is impossible to cooperate normally in coalition with Russia. These 365 days of war have reminded us that Russia listens only to the language of force and the language of resistance, the language of struggle, and getting along with Russia is a very breakneck task. Poland has been supporting Ukraine since the very beginning of the Russian invasion. Even a day before the war broke out, the president of Poland, Andrzej Duda, and the president of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėda, arrived in Kiev. This was Volodymyr Zelensky's last diplomatic meeting before the Russian aggression. Poland also absolutely does not agree with such a position and with such actions of Russia. We will not accept the occupation of Crimea, the violation of Ukraine's borders, the violation of international law, any blackmail and restriction of the sovereignty of other free democratic nations. Initially, not all Western countries supported severe sanctions on Russia. Among others, Germany resisted removing Russia from the SWIFT international banking system. On February 26th, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki traveled to Berlin for talks with Chancellor Olaf Scholz. The result of the meeting was a change in the German government's policy toward Russia. We need to cut off Russian financial institutions, Russian companies from financing on the capital markets, and take them out of the MSCI index. The financial world knows very well what this means. Close SWIFT to Russia. All sanctions are now on the table. In March, when the situation in Ukraine was critical and Kyiv was almost completely surrounded, an international delegation headed by Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki and President of the Law and Justice political party, Jarosław Kaczyński, arrived in the city. It was the first such visit since the beginning of the war. By contrast, President Andrzej Duda spoke at the Kyiv parliament in May. What is needed is a peacekeeping mission, a humanitarian mission, NATO and perhaps some other organizations, but a mission shielded by arms. Poland warned the world about the Kremlin's imperial plans as early as 2008 during Russia's attack on Georgia. At that time, however, late President Lech Kaczynski's voice was not taken seriously. Today, Georgia, tomorrow, Ukraine, the day after tomorrow, the Baltic states, and later perhaps time will come for my country, Poland. The memory in Georgia of the 2008 Russian aggression is still alive. Russia is already a loser. It has failed to achieve its own military goals. It has failed to remove the Ukrainian government. It has also failed to exhaust the patience of the people. And it has failed to erode international support. Today, the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden announced the imposition of further sanctions on Russia. Moreover, the United States will provide Ukraine with, among other things, $250 million in emergency aid to repair energy infrastructure, but also combat drones, artillery, and mine clearance equipment. In parallel, the European Union is working on a 10th package of sanctions. Since the beginning of the Russian aggression, millions of Ukrainians have been forced to leave their country. In the face of such a great tragedy, Polish people have opened their hearts and extended a helping hand. Poland has a great tradition of showing solidarity. If Ukraine had not received help, Russia could have used it for further conquests. From the very beginning of the aggression against our eastern neighbor, we have helped by giving not only humanitarian aid, but also military aid. The Polish nation understands like no other what the struggle for independence is. When Russian troops attacked independent Ukraine on the night of February 23rd to 24th, Poles rush to the borders to bring aid to those in need.
Polska jest liderem pomocy dla Ukrainy.
Poland is a leader in aid to Ukraine, both military and humanitarian. We opened our hearts and our homes to our neighbors. There were and are no refugee camps in Poland. We hosted our guests in our homes. The solidarity we have shown to Ukraine has been recognized around the world. U.S. President Joe Biden, during a recent visit to Warsaw, thanked Poles for what they are doing for their neighbors across the eastern border.
Poland's generosity, your willingness to open your hearts and your homes is extraordinary.
According to the UN, more than 8 million people have fled Ukraine since February 24th, including 1.5 million to Poland. Another 8 million people were resettled inside Ukrainian territory. In addition, about 1.5 million Ukrainians, including more than 230,000 children, have been deported deep into Russia. For us, this year has been a big challenge in terms of checking in these people. We wanted as many people as possible to be able to enter the country, those people who are looking for help. So our task was to streamline border clearance, increase the capacity of border crossings to the maximum by maximizing the use of the infrastructure of border crossings, as well as the equipment we have at our disposal. In total, Poland has allocated more than 40 billion zloty to help Ukraine. Involved are not only state bodies, but also non-governmental organizations. Caritas Poland has donated about 600 million zloty for humanitarian aid. From the beginning, we said that helping Ukraine is not a sprint race, but a marathon. We stick to these words at all times. A year has passed and we have managed to do so much. We are proud and happy about it. From this place, I would like to say thank you to everyone who got involved. Ordinary people are also helping. Since May 2022, a group of friends from Warsaw has been regularly traveling with food supplies to the border crossing in Hrubieszów. We don't know what the future will bring, so we have to make every effort to keep the front line as far away from the Polish borders as possible. We do what we can. We also managed to donate drone components to our volunteers earlier. Generally, military equipment we do not carry, but sometimes there are some first aid kits or backpacks. Generally, rather long-term food like canned goods, etc., which can be useful for soldiers. One of those fleeing the war is Kyiv National Theater actress and singer, Vlada Murawec. I have been to other countries this year as well, and I have never found such friendship as in Poland anywhere else. I feel at home in Poland, and it is the greatest pleasure for me. And together with my son, we understand that it is not our home, but we are quite alike as people, that it almost feels like home. While Putin wages a brutal and tragic war, Ukrainian children dream of only one thing: returning home. That's what I dream about. But if there will be a long, long war, if this war will never end, then maybe I will stay in Poland. But that can't be true. The war will end, and that's why I think I will return.
Ale to nieprawda. Wojna się skończy. I dlatego myślę, że wrócę.
In the afternoon, a protest began in front of the Russian embassy in Warsaw. But earlier in the morning, Ukrainians living in Poland woke up Russian embassy staff with the sound of sirens and the sound of explosions. According to the UN, of those who remain in Ukraine, as many as 18 million require humanitarian assistance. Among the civilians most in need are people with disabilities, the elderly, children, and pregnant women. The Eiffel Tower, the Sydney Opera House, and the buildings of the European Parliament. These are just some of the many architectural landmarks around the world illuminated today in the colors of Ukraine's flag to remind us of the unwavering support for the heroic nation fighting against Russian aggressors. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Please stay tuned for Poland Daily Weather, Poland Daily Business, and some of our other programs. But for me, it's have a wonderful weekend.